strategy in the 1980s in black areas because under apartheid, people were not getting services in the black areas. The reality is that in the last 30 years, there's not a single black area designated as a black area under apartheid that has been developed to the same standard as the average previously white suburb in South Africa. So is it any wonder that people are still involved in a culture of non-payment? Because why should they pay when they weren't paying in Alex in the 80s? Why should they pay in Alex today when Alex has not been developed? And the second point I wanted to raise, which I wanted to raise before, is Kumi talked about a caring government. I think in Johannesburg in particular, and I think actually many of the metros, we are being held hostage by all political parties to political power struggles where the energy of political office bearers is being focused on fighting these political battles, not caring about what's happening in our cities, and even that kind of political maneuvering is being determined to a certain extent to political battles at a provincial and national level too. And that has to stop, because the job of the people who are MMCs and who are mayors and even officials who shouldn't be politically inclined is to serve the people of the city. And really, these political shenanigans have to stop.
Yeah, politics is affecting our pockets. I want to speak to Annaline. Where are you, Annaline, from Debt Rescue? You've done some research that gives you shocking numbers of how we are not coping. You know, I don't want to lose that I used some of the statistics in my introduction. Just tell us how tough is it?
Well, it's incredibly tough out there, because what our surveys have shown us is that when we started polling before the increase was implemented, we asked consumers, what would this do to your budget? 89% told us that they cannot afford it, that this is just completely beyond them. People have turned to looking at prepaid meters so that they can have a little bit more control, where they're not reliant on strange billing methods, and being hit with this out of the blue. A very, very small percentage have looked at, for example, turning to solar, but we know that's an incredibly expensive option. And a lot of people have had to reach, in the region of about 60%, have turned to looking at cheap alternatives, for example, camping gas stoves, etc., to try and bring the bills down, because they can no longer afford the impact.
Are people turning more and more to credit to support those kind of costs?
Absolutely, definitely. We have seen this feedback coming from the credit providers. We've seen this feedback coming from the credit bureaus, and we're seeing it ourselves. Is consumers are literally using store cards and credit cards and personal loans to put food on the table every single month.
Tough times for South Africans, for residents of municipalities, which majority are dysfunctional, and our metros are not really being run in an efficient manner. That's the message that is coming through. There's a lot of criminality on both sides, and corruption seems to be endemic. So how can we meet each other halfway? How can we sustain ourselves into the future? What are the possible solutions? We'll explore them when we come back here on We the Nation.
Welcome to Week in One, the show that gives you a quick roundup of some of the top news stories and interviews featured on eNCA over the past 7 days. I'm Heidi Jakos. Let's catch you up. Diepsloot burns as residents take to the streets all the way to the Union buildings in Pretoria over rising crime levels in the township.
I'm Poel Jones. Let's get straight into this week's top stories. 17 people, 3 of them children, have died at the Angelo Informal Settlement in Boksburg after inhaling fumes from a leaking gas canister.
I'm Melissa Dupré. Let's get right into it. Residents evacuated after an explosion rips through Lillian Goy Street in the Joburg CBD.
We continue our discussion here about municipalities and tariff increases. We want to try now and look forward to by asking how do we ensure, how can we ensure rather that municipalities generate income that they say they need to provide services to run their business without crippling the residents that are part of the metros. Just want to try and get some ideas around. Yes, sir, please say your name and who you are in answering that question.
Correct. My name is Neil Pollock, and I'm the Vice President of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And we see what's going on around the whole country. And I think if you just look at us as an audience, there's not one person sitting here that's not in pain. So we as a collective are in pain. And I've been sitting listening to people here, not trying to be disrespectful and trying to actually highlight what's happening. And if you go and look at South Africa, we are extremely resilient. And also we do look for solutions. Business in the last year has brought on 4 gigawatts of power, which shows you that where there's problems, business finds solutions. But I think it takes a step back from there, that we are all residents of a municipality somewhere, and we need to start looking at the words that we use, because it's our words that we're saying, you are doing something wrong, you are doing something wrong, you're part of corruption, you're part of corruption. But we must know an uncle or aunt, a brother or a sister, my wife or myself, that's part of that corruption. Until we start addressing it at that level, we can't find solutions. Now, businesses, the majority of them are small, and those small businesses have 1 or 2 or maybe 5 people working for them. And they're having to go to their staff and say to them, I cannot give you an increase because there's power cuts. I need to buy a generator. I need to get water. And small businesses and their staff are working together to sort this out. And now's the time that business needs to start working with the municipalities, because businesses have got the solutions. Businesses will step up. Businesses, their staff will work 12, 14, 16 hours a day to get problems sorted. And it's when you start looking at that base of South Africa, that's where solutions are going to be found.
Okay. Yes, say your name and solutions and who you represent.
Thanks, Braden. I'm Papike Mohali. I'm with the South African Municipal Workers Union. Braden, I think if we are to seriously solve the problems that we are faced with, number one, we have to deal with the fact that municipalities have become breeding ground for corruption and fraud. Deal with that, we'll have municipalities that are able to function and deliver services. Number two, Braden, earlier on when we're dealing with the reasons, the tariffs, what has increased, I think it was the MMC from Tshwane who said service providers have increased tariffs. That's the reason why. If we deal with the issue of privatization of municipal services, we are going to have municipalities that are able to deliver services.
Are you wanting privatization or not privatization?
No, I'm saying if we deal with privatization, meaning that the services must be re-municipalized. You can't take a service wherein you have already employed people to do the same function. You have a contract, a tender, you give it out for someone to go and do the same service, where else you have people that we have already employed to do that service. So that is one way wherein municipalities are losing money. But over and above that, Braden, we need to have intergovernmental relations that looks at the funding model for municipalities. Until we deal with the funding model for municipalities, we are not going to be able to address the challenges that municipalities are faced. Lastly, President, if you allow me, it's the issue that we face in terms of non-payment. Non-payment happens from residents and businesses. Also government. You have government departments that are today not paying for services that they owe to municipalities, which also just shows that there is non-government relations. They are not there. They are non-existent. But moreover, municipalities themselves do not have the billing system in place to bill. An example, I'll give you an example, and this will be my last input. There's a municipality in Northwest, which when we went there in February this year, it had failed to pay workers their salaries. When we asked the mayor at the time, we asked her, what's wrong? She said, we do not have money. We have not been able to bill since the beginning of the financial year. When did the financial year begin? 1 July last year. So municipalities themselves are not billing. Okay. And there are residents that are able to pay and business that are able to pay, but they are not because they've not been built.
Okay, you made your points on solutions there.
Thank you.
Other solutions possible?
Solutions possible. Again, Khotso from the Soweto Business Chamber, Braden. And I think Brapapi touched on a couple of things that become quite fundamental. One, intergovernmental relations. You cannot have a municipality that functions outside of a province that's in a silo from national. Effectively, if there's a breakdown there, you cannot coordinate. Now, secondly, not only municipalities, but throughout the country, we have a simple function for municipalities. Yours is not to basically be the biggest employer and. Yours is to facilitate for economic growth. Now, economic growth is facilitated through you making sure that your services are efficient so that business is able to generate economies or kickstart economies within those municipalities. Now, unfortunately, if you do not start delivering on basic services and working with business on strategies of how business can then start making sure that we have living economies around us, we are not going to be able to go any further.
Okay. Brian from NESA?
Yes, sir. Maybe because you are looking for possible solutions, there's a development that is currently happening within the electricity pricing system. Melanie talked about the court case that was brought against the current methodology that has been used. But yeah, they did win that case, but it was not a blind spot just like that, because NERSA some 5-6 years ago had already developed what we call a cost of supply system. So we were actually going towards that route. But now the court said that we can only use the current system of benchmarking. We can only use it for this year. Coming next year, then we need to do a cost of supply system. We cannot use averaging. So that is, for me, it is indeed a step in the right direction, because now you will actually be awarding a price increase to the municipality based on their actual cost to supply.
Is it the best model? Is it the best model, or are there other better ones?
It is for me. It is internationally accepted. It's used in many countries. And the only reason it was not used by NERSA all the years was, if you remember, NERSA was established as NER, the electricity regulator, not energy regulator, was established in 1994-95. And at that time, we had municipalities that were doing their own tariffs. And then we just took over and we said, let us normalize the system. And it took us some time, longer than we thought, that it would actually normalize. But now, coming next year, no municipal tariffs will be done not based on cost of supply.
Will it result in lower percentage increases?
You see, that is where the trick is, because sometimes, you know, there are munis that are actually paying less than or charging less than what their cost to supply is. And there are those that are charging much higher than what it costs them to supply. So it might sound very well, but if you are in a municipality that is actually now currently charging lower tariffs than their cost to supply, be aware you may see higher increases.
Thanks, Brian.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Solutions?
So I hear the Chamber of Commerce is here, and society is built with businesses and residents as well, and businesses are only paying for services, but they're not uplifting the communities. So I do believe that we can do a partnership between business and civil society in terms of, you know, if you have a pothole and it's around one of these huge malls that are making huge amount of money, that they can get involved in actually fixing those level of things.
Community and business partnership, yes?
Okay. In conclusion, with solutions, let them depoliticize our municipalities, because they're sabotaging one another. Provincial cannot support a certain party because they don't want them to win. It's all about struggling for power And as we struggle on the ground, they don't care. All that matters is that the party X has won, party B. So the sabotage is rife in our municipalities. They must just get rid of those backdoor employees or deployees. They must get relevant people with relevant experience and stop politicizing our pockets.
Thank you very much. Can you, Trevor, take the mic? Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is the funding model. It's neoliberal, it's capitalist. So basically, if a community is poor, it ends up with getting less money. So what we need is that more money must be given to municipalities from the fiscus. And to get that money, exactly, my brother, we have to tax the rich. Now, all this talk about business, there is two types of business. There is big business and small business. Big business is laughing all the way to the bank, Dan. Yeah, their tax rate is going down every time they get tax cuts, whatever. Yeah, our government must stand up, tax the big guys, Oppenheimer, Mutsipe, all of them. Can you see? Yeah. The worst part is that these big businesses now, they are being cushioned by the rising black bourgeoisie, can you see, who are now starting to speak the same language as our old exploiters.
Yeah,
so tax the rich.
Why you look at me when you say black bourgeoisie? Okay, can you give to Matthew? Matthew there. Matthew has the hand up. Yeah. Solutions?
Let's protect Dan.
Thank you, Matthew.
Look, I think first maybe 4 issues. One is the issue of corruption. People who steal must go to prison. There has been some progress by SIU, by SARS, but not enough, especially in local government. We need to have basically a single public procurement system as well, because that often is the cesspool of stealing across municipalities. We do need to deploy competent management, competent officials. You'll find at times a utilities director is not an engineer. You've seen, for example, now when government starts dealing with corruption, municipalities don't know how to spend money. So Madibeng, they returned about R1 billion last year on infrastructure because they don't know how to spend it. Yet the roads in Madibeng and Brits are just potholes. There's barely any roads left. We do need to have a frank discussion about consolidating municipalities, because right now to have 259 mayors and speakers, 10,000 councillors, yet communities are not getting the basic services they need. That social system is not working. Some councils are just simply too small to sustain. You should rather look at consolidating towards districts. But of course, Dan, also we can fix local government, but if you don't fix the economy of Eskom, of Transnet, then we're not going to resolve the fundamental solution, which is growing in the economy.
Okay, Melanie, you had your hand up. Where's the mic? Please, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to perhaps put a challenge out to our colleague from NERSA. We did have to take that issue to court in order to get a decision out of that. And there are a lot of municipalities that are not adhering to their licensing requirements in order to be able to distribute electricity. They have a constitutional right to distribute it, but they have requirements that the energy regulator requires them to meet in order to be licensed. No municipality voluntarily has their license adjusted in any way. Those that are not able to run efficiently should have an intervention by NERSA to ensure that the inefficiencies don't get visited on us. Their cost of supply is unacceptable. If they can't run it properly, it must be taken away and given to somebody who can run it. So that's my challenge to NERSA without us having to go to court.
Ma'am?
Thank you. On solutions, we believe that there should be a real private-public partnership, particularly in the areas of consultation. I mean, we're having these discussions, the nation is part of these discussions, but you find that a lot of people have not even heard of these rate increases, but they will be facing the consequences. So how the municipalities consult and communicate with stakeholders, and their key stakeholders are the residences. So, not just the businesses, but also the residences, because they are the people who have to understand and carry in the buy-in and change the culture of non-payment. So the consultation, transparency, and also how long, for instance, when people have to lodge against